Today I will be carrying on with my repairs to the scuttle. I've actually had a proper poke at this area. It's not as scary as I thought it would be. I had anticipated chopping from there down and replacing this whole front section, but it's actually not that bad. It's just surface rust on this flange. The only real way of telling exactly what's going on is to attack it with the wire wheel, which I'll do, and then I'll be able to see exactly what's under there. So yeah, that's the bit I repaired the other day. I'm gonna take these plates off and fashion some pieces of metal to cover them, and then seam seal those on rather than drilling and bolting. Then I will get my brushable seam sealer, mask up, and then do the like over the seams here and on the other side, and then that's the front face of the bulkhead done. Then it's clean up the scuttle itself and start repairing the windscreen aperture and work my way up here, and then a couple of patches, top of that A-pillar, top here, top there. I'm going to try and do it without taking this trim off because it's an absolute ball ache to try and remove without damaging. And even if you do damage, if you get it off without damaging it, getting it back on without damaging it is, you know, a work of art. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to leave that in place. Just use some sandpaper, coarse sandpaper, to knock back any paint I put over that seam. That'll give something for my brushable seam sealer to key onto. Because that's actually really quite thin, I'm going to mask up around there just to make nice clean lines. I've also gone around that edge again with the sandpaper. Going to degrease it now. I don't have any proper degreaser, but I'm going to use brake and clutch cleaner because it's basically sort of a solvent, a light solvent in an aerosol, so you can blast the dust out of the crevices, and then it'll get rid of the grease as well, so the seam sealer should stick nicely. Right, done my masking. Couldn't actually find any masking tape, so I used electrical tape. It's not what you'd use on a proper paint job because I think it's got silicone in it or something, so it reacts with paints, but it's fine for seam sealer. It's also much better for doing around corners, so because it stretches more. That's on. This is my U-Pole grey stripe seam sealer, brushable seam sealer. They give you like a fiberglass brush for it, and in the past I've used stuff like Tiger Seal and polyurethane seam sealers to act as seam sealer, brushable seam sealer, but this stuff is a lot less viscous, so you can paint it on really nicely. Well, that's the idea. I'm going to try and do this one-handed, but might make a mess of it. Oh, it smells great too. Right, so the idea is just to go around, fill in any imperfections in my welds, make it look nice, and hopefully if you didn't know about SD1s you'd think that this was all a factory seam or something. So yeah, just going to carry on and I'll take a photo when I'm done. That's on there now. It might look a bit messy, but when I peel the masking tape off, hopefully I should be left with quite a neat sort of factory looking seam. Now comes the question of when to start taking that tape off. So if I leave it too long, it'll sort of try and peel off the stuff I've painted on. If you go too quick, it'll ruin it too. So I'm going to try and just wait till it starts to air surface dry and then peel it off, and hopefully that'll be okay. Then if I really need to, I can put some solvent on the brush and go over the top to get rid of any bits that have sort of stretched out or have gone stringy. I got the tape off, and there are a few areas where it's stringed up, like there. So what I was going to do is put some solvent on this brush and then just brush it down, but as I do that it's starting to skin up like that, so it's just dragging the top surface. So considering all of this is hidden behind the bulkhead insulation panels, and I'd rather it stayed on there than me dragging it off, I'm just going to leave that to set as is. The backside hasn't yet been sealed, haven't even like rubbed it down, but when I get to the point where I've done all the welding on the scuttle, I'll seam seal the inside, rust treat those frilly bits, and then epoxy it. So that'll be done at a later date. So anyway, all of that scary welding on the front side is now complete. It looks pretty factory, so I'm really happy. Now I'm going to get the grinder out and remove these old blanking plates and put some square sheet panels on there instead. Got those plates off. That's the remainder of the one that was at the top there. That one there is easy. This one there, I'll actually need to drill the 2 holes because they actually support a bracket on the interior. Those 2 are just blank. And then that one down there, that holds this thing, and that one is a blank. So I'm just going to cut some sheet, like a Zintex sheet up. I'm going to degrease this and etch prime it, and then rather than actually bolting the panels back in, I'm going to bond them in with polyurethane seam sealer, because it sets like a bitch and it won't leak. These are my plates. They're made out of the 1.2 Zintex, so they're nice and stiff. That's the etch primer just going off there. I'm going to shoot a bit of gloss black on these and then leave them on the heater to cook off while I go and have a cup of tea. Then when I come back, I'll bond them in. While I'm waiting for the paint to dry, I thought I'd do some exploratory poking. The skin is actually okay, it's just surfaced, but this section needs to come out. Lower down, we've got this surface rust here, but the seam has started to blow. So really, that all wants to come out. And then down here, we got these holes, so that needs to come out. And then that runs into this bit, which also, guess what, needs to come out. I still have this bit, which I chopped out of the gold car, so that's sorted for down there. And then what I'll do is I'll just take the top of that off and massage it until it fits in there. Annoyingly, I'll have to get this chrome off, so I'm going to have a go at that next. But it is I've done it before, and I think I've only done it once where it didn't sort of destroy it. They're not like difficult to get, you can still buy them brand new, and they're only about 12 quid, but it's nice to try and keep them original if I can. I wasn't going to bother videoing this because it's pretty boring, but if anyone else is doing this, you might think you want to start at one end and work your way all the way along, but bizarrely, and I only know this from fitting them, they always want to pop off at this curve first, so that's where I'm starting, and then I'm actually going to just go backwards and forwards with the chisel. This is a blunt wood chisel, and I'm just putting it very gently under there. If you hit it on that bit, you'll bugger it. So I won't be able to film me doing this, but that's the basic process. It's already popped from the middle here, which is good, and so far I haven't wrecked it. It's getting a bit dark and I can feel spots of rain, so I'm going to try and get this done, and really fingers crossed it doesn't piss down, because that'll ruin my plans for welding it all back together. One thing I didn't show you was the chrome joiner there. It just gave it a spray of WD-40 and then knocked it back with a blunt screwdriver. Hopefully that won't have marked there. I have very, very gently tapped it from there back towards the edge, and it's just sprung off. So now I'm going to go a bit further around here and down towards the front. Ta-da! Off without a bend in it. Really happy with that. It's stupid because it's, you know, easily replaceable, but it's still quite satisfying nonetheless. And what it's revealed is that that's not rusty, which is good, because trying to rebuild that is a pain, because I've done it before again, but when you weld that and you grind it back smooth, it has to be perfectly in line with the rest of it, otherwise your trim piece will never go back on. So yeah, I'm pleased that that's not gone anywhere. I'm chopping and changing between jobs quite a lot on this video, but that's just kind of the way it goes sometimes when you're, you know, trying to get stuff done quickly while, you know, making sure it doesn't rain. These are my panels, or like little replacement panels for the bulkhead. The paint's basically dry now. I'm going to bond them in using Tiger Seal, which is adhesive sealant. Originally they're bolted with a shitty like foam gasket thing, and they never actually stay watertight. This stuff, that Tiger Seal or any of the polyurethane seam sealers like Bondworth Seal, they're basically what you stick caravans together with. So yeah, it's pretty hardy stuff. It flexes, it doesn't sort of delaminate if you've got nice clean surfaces. So the idea is painted side down, snot them on there. I've pre-drilled the holes that I'm going to need, and then where there would have been holes I've left it blank so it shouldn't leak. This car is rare in the fact that this whole area is incredibly solid. Most SD1s have a little bit of problem in that area. So yeah, I'm just going to put some seam sealer on here, offer them up, and then just slide a few bolts through for positioning rather than actually to hold them on. There we have, gobbed on. It's brilliant stuff, but it can be incredibly messy. So just want to get that on. All the bits where it splurges out, I'm going to just get that brush I used earlier for the seam sealing and rub it back, or like smooth it off. You can also lick your finger and wet it and do it, but you can also end up poisoning yourself doing that. So yeah, probably won't do that. Oops. Lovely. You might think it's a bit of a bodge not bolting it, or welding it even, but seriously, take my word for it, that will never come off. It's tough as. Right, and I've also got some bolts I'm just going to put through for placement, really, to make sure that the holes stay aligned so that I can bolt that panel up on the inside of the bulkhead. It's to hold the fuses, so yeah, it's critical that that doesn't wobble around. Cool, job's a good one. Been doing some more exploratory grindy chop. Good news is the skin is good. Actually, this whole area is pretty good news. The bit underneath is just surface rust. I think you call that the cant rail, like inside the A-pillar. Header rail, that is just minimal. That'll grind out, and I might put a few welds in just for strength, but it's no big deal. Down here, the actual inside of the A-pillar gutter, yeah, okay, that's focused now. That's all good. So it's really, oh, bollocks, it's just the flange. So what I've done is made a few cuts in it just to open the seam up. Then I'm going to go get my die grinder and properly get in there, and then I can start repairing it. I've been cleaning up using a combination of the die grinder, wire brush on a drill, and an angle grinder. I've basically got as much of the rust out of that area as I can. Also chopped out the brazing which was in there because the MIG welder doesn't get on very well with that. Cleaned up the surface rust here. I was going to drill out that flange, but I don't think I will now because the flange itself isn't rotted, it's just where water is collected on the top surface. So I'm just going to scrub that out and treat it. Same with that whole area there. Then coming down here, I've taken the top surface of the flange off all the way down to there. This bit I'll do on another day, but yeah, basically now I need to weld a fillet onto there, plug weld it onto that bit, and then seam weld it to the inner flange of the A-pillar, which is really good. And I'm going to chop out a bit from that gold donor panel to go in there. That's the die grinder end I've been using. It's really good because it's cylindrical and flat, so you can, with such a sharp corner on it, you can basically cut through there and then with a hammer and chisel just flake the rest of the flange off. Same up here really. Then I was also using the triangular point one because it's good for getting into the corners. Well, I was feeling quite smug with myself that I had now got a really neat repair piece to go in. That obviously drilled out the spot weld and separated the flanges off that gold bit. bit of surface rust on the back, but it's just from condensation, like building up in here. So that's, you know, that's nothing bad. What is slightly annoying, and I hadn't fully appreciated, the A-pillar is obviously quite thick at the bottom and then tapers thin at the top. This bit is probably from about there. Consequently, when you shove it up here, it's a tiny bit too deep. So I might have to do is chop down there and then weld it back together, then shove it in the car. And for the reference width, I'm going to use that one. Try not to trip over. So it's close. In fact, it's so close I might not even bother. But yeah, I won't know until I've trimmed off the top at an angle and got it sat in there properly. I've just put some of the Built Handbar Hydrate 80 rust killer in there. So when that's done, it will dry black. That's my donor piece. I realised I was worrying about nothing in terms of the width of this. When I chopped it, I didn't actually chop into the side, so the bit I'm putting on is just a flat panel, so therefore I could shave it short and that will fit in there nicely. What I'm going to do now is drill a hole through there and put a little tang on the end of this, so then when it's poked through I could put a plug weld in there, because it would originally have been brazed. I can't braze, so I'm going to plug weld, and then it'll leave a nice area so that I can put a bead of seam sealer across it so that it looks like factory original. What a lot of people do is end up welding it and then they put filler across the top, and you lose this sort of detail line which I want to keep. So by putting a little strap and then plug welding it, it'll keep it like solid and rigid, but allow me to put seam sealer across it and look original. It's overkill, I know, but you know, might as well. Hopefully you can now see what I mean by a tab. So welded to the back side of this bit, you can just see the distortion from the heat is that bit of metal which will pick up through that hole in the roof, and then that's good to go. I might open up the hole a bit more along here and here to make sure I get a good penetrative weld in there, and then this bit I've dressed back so that I can plug weld onto that part of the frame there and seam along here and up into there. This bit will have nothing in it, but it will there, and then I could do my liner seam sealer over the top so it looks factory. So I'm going to take that off again, zinc prime the back side of that panel and the inside of the A-pillar, and then snot it into place. Final fettling done. I'm pretty happy with that. The line up past the side of the screen is good. The gap I've got around to weld into is nice, and I know I can pick up on that tang, so nothing else left but to start tacking it in. Well, it's in there. A couple of bits farted and popped more than I would have liked. It looks really messy, but it's really solid, and that's all that matters at this stage. All of this will rub down to basically being an invisible repair, and yet I know I've got good penetration because I had the welder turned up quite high. Spot welds, plug welds, sorry, both went in really well. I'm going to dress all this back and look for any pinholes. There shouldn't be any because I put so much weld in there. And then I'll neaten it all up and give it some etch primer to stop it from rusting. It's getting pretty grey now and I'm tired, so I'm going to pack up, I think, after I've dressed this back and head home. Jobbed. It's all in there. The profile is really nice, so I'm happy with that. A bit of filler and some seam sealer and that should be as good as new. All the rot's gone. Just gotta do the rest of the car now.